It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday morning. I was enjoying my coffee on the porch of the home my wife and I had worked years to build. Nothing seemed unusual, at least not yet. Across the street stood Martha Higgins, our HOA president. She had her phone out and was taking pictures of my property again. That was becoming a regular habit. For months, she had complained about everything: my truck, my fence, even the American flag hanging by. The garage. She always found something to complain about. The violation notices arrived almost every week. Most of them were ridiculous. Some contradicted the HOA's own rules. But Martha didn't seem to care. My wife, Rebecca, worked long hours. She was respected throughout the county. Most people knew exactly who she was. Martha somehow didn't. Rebecca usually left before sunrise. Martha rarely saw her, and because of that, she made a very expensive assumption. At the next HOA meeting, Martha made her move. She claimed I was violating community regulations. Then she demanded immediate action. The board followed her lead. What I didn't know was that Martha had escalated things. Instead of following normal procedures, she started making calls. Very serious calls. Meanwhile, I was in my garage, completely unaware of what was happening. I thought the worst thing I'd deal with that day was another violation letter. Then I heard engines outside. Multiple vehicles pulled into my driveway. The atmosphere changed instantly. Something wasn't right. A loud knock echoed through the house. I opened the door. 3 HOA officers stood outside. None of them looked friendly. One officer handed me a document. Another demanded access to my property. I asked what authority they had. Their answer made no sense. Then I spotted Martha, standing near the sidewalk. She looked extremely pleased with herself, like she had already won. I asked them again. What exactly was I accused of? The officers exchanged nervous glances. Even they seemed uncertain. Then the front door opened behind me, and everything changed. Rebecca stepped outside, wearing her sheriff's uniform. The officers froze instantly. Every confident expression disappeared. The mood shifted in seconds. They knew exactly who she was. Rebecca calmly asked a simple question: who authorized this visit? Nobody answered immediately. The silence was telling. For the first time all morning, Martha looked worried. The smug smile vanished. Reality was finally catching up. Rebecca reviewed every page, line by line. The more she read, the more concerned she became. She asked who approved the paperwork, who issued the orders, and why standard procedures weren't followed. Nobody had good answers. The officers finally admitted they had acted on information provided by Martha. None of them had independently verified the claims. Rebecca remained calm, but her disappointment was obvious. Martha tried to interrupt. She insisted she was protecting the community, but every word sounded weaker than the last. People were beginning to see the truth. Neighbors started coming outside. They had heard the commotion. Within minutes, half the street was watching. Soon, other residents began sharing stories. Many had received similar complaints. Martha's behavior wasn't new. She had targeted others before. Rebecca compared the paperwork against official procedures. The mistakes were impossible to ignore. Several documents contained major problems, and everyone knew it. The officers realized they had been placed in a difficult position. They weren't expecting this outcome. Their confidence had completely disappeared. Now they just wanted answers. Martha became defensive. She blamed misunderstandings. Then she blamed the officers. But nobody seemed convinced. I barely needed to say anything. Rebecca handled the entire situation professionally. Facts spoke louder than emotions, and facts were on our side. The mood in the neighborhood shifted quickly. People who once feared speaking up were suddenly finding their voices. Questions started spreading. Several HOA board members arrived. They had heard conflicting reports. What they found was far different from what Martha described. Rebecca calmly explained everything. She showed them the paperwork. She pointed out every inconsistency. The board listened carefully. For the first time, Martha seemed completely alone. Even her closest supporters were stepping back. The officers apologized. For confusion, they acknowledged the situation openly. Then they prepared to leave. The tension was finally easing. Neighbors approached us afterward. Many thanked Rebecca. Others shared their own experiences. A real conversation had begun. The board immediately scheduled a meeting. They wanted answers, and they wanted them fast. The pressure was building. A few days later, the meeting room was full. Residents from across the neighborhood attended. Everyone wanted to be heard. One after another, people shared their experiences. The stories sounded remarkably similar. A pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Martha listened quietly. The confidence she once displayed was nowhere to be found. The room had changed. The board examined months of records. They reviewed complaints. They reviewed decisions, and they reviewed Martha's actions. Rebecca and I simply told the truth. We didn't exaggerate anything. We didn't need to. The facts were enough. After hours of discussion, the board reached a decision. The room fell silent. Everyone waited. The announcement was welcomed by many. People felt heard. They felt respected. For some, it was long overdue. As we walked outside, the neighborhood felt different. The tension that had lingered for months was finally fading. The community slowly returned to normal. Neighbors talked again. Families gathered outside. Things felt peaceful. What started as an attempt to intimidate us ended very differently than anyone expected. Truth prevailed. And sometimes, that's the strongest victory of all. HOA Drama Neighbor.